All right, well, it's a day later. It got dark. I was working in the dark last night, trying to finish up putting up the fascia. You can see behind me up here is the fascia piece that we put up. Down on the end over here, I have a little scab piece that I need to put in, and it's kind of underneath the existing soffit of the house. So we're getting ready now to put up the 1x6s. Which isn't really 1x's, they're more like 5/8 inch thick cedar on the inside. And Julie's going to come in here this morning and stain the joist so that they all match and it looks more finished. So she's going to do that this morning, and I'm going to head down and clean out the chicken coop because we want to get those joist rafters stained before we start putting the cedar on, so that we don't have to mask all the joists when we stain it. So that's the plan here this morning, and that's it. So here's how the cedar is going to be built up. It'll be sitting on top of all the rafters, so that when we're under the deck looking up, we'll see all that nice cedar up on the underside instead of all the plywood. And then it'll complement the shingles, the cedar shingles here on the wall as well. This morning we had a debate whether or not we should put the cedar shingles on the bottom side of the joist so that we didn't see the joist, but we had a debate, Julie and I, and decided that it's a porch, so seeing this and the rafters, especially if we stain the rafters, I don't know, it's a little more rustic looking, and we think having this up top will I don't know, just be better for the porch. If this was an interior piece, then I would probably fight a little bit more to put the cedar on the bottom side, and that way we wouldn't see any of the joists. It would just be a finished cedar piece on the bottom. But we're going to install them on top. So this is where Julie's going to come in this morning and stain all of these rafters, so that we don't have to mask them off when we put the cedar on.
The one up above the door is really nice.
Oh yeah.
It has a nice warmth to it, brings out the grain.
Yeah, there's a difference there.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Stained, unstained.
It's gonna be pretty.
How about that one? Is that one stained?
Yep. All the rest are stained.
Yeah. No, that goes good.
Yeah, it's gonna be nice. It'll be dark up there, so it'll all blend in.
Oh yeah. What kind of stain are we using?
Cabot, I think, C-A-B-O-T, Australian timber oil. It's
Can
good
you read
for,
the label?
yeah, oh, kinda. It's good for decks, outdoor furniture. It's meant for outside.
Oh, there we go.
It has tung, linseed, and alkoid in it.
All right, so I made a major flaw in this construction. and I've done it before in the past, and I did it again this time. And that is, when I put this up, I measured the distance from that corner of the deck or the cover to here, and got that measurement, and I made sure that this measurement down here from here all the way across was the same. But I didn't check for squareness, which basically, if you take a square and you angle it, you could still have the same distance across, but it's no longer square. It becomes a parallelogram. And I assumed that the house was at a 90-degree angle, and I just found out because I was looking at my boards I was putting up, and they were overhanging on the corners a little bit. They weren't sitting square up against this rafter. So what I should have done was measured from that corner diagonally all the way across to this corner, and checked that corner and measured all the way across to make sure that the measurements were the same. And I didn't do that. So now the cover is wonked a little bit, and it's become a parallelogram of sorts. So I'm going to have to do some trimming. I can probably maybe get away with it on these 1x3s because it's just a little bit. But when I lay down the sheathing, the 1/2-inch ply, I'm going to have a big overhang, and I'm going to have to cut it off because it's not square. So that's the biggest issue with that, is my sheets aren't going to sit squarely on the ends. I'm hoping it doesn't screw me on my joist when I'm screwing it in. But we'll have to compensate. I got it. That's fairly light. So ideally, before anyone complains on the video, is when you're laying sheets of plywood, you should stagger the seams. So on these two sheets, I had a seam there. So this seam over here, ideally, I should have cut this plywood like in half and put a 1/2 sheet on, so that the full length of the next sheet spanned this area. But it's a porch deck, porch cover, so I don't want to take the time to cut one in half and do all of that, so I'm just going to do it like this. Put some extra liquid nails down to help keep the cedar from bowing. But also, I like to glue these pieces together a little bit. And I run the liquid nails vertically, so if water gets underneath it, it doesn't trap. Doesn't create a puddle and then rot out. Got to be careful not to step in between the joists, because these 1x6s are pretty thin. I don't want to bust them. Nicer fit. where my squareness comes into play a little bit. My seam here is not quite on. Huh. I'll finish putting screws in this. I'll be good to go.